Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And it's an honour to rise in the House today to begin debate at second reading on Bill S-227, the Food Day in Canada Act. And I'm especially pleased to begin debate on this bill on what in Ontario is Agriculture Week. Agriculture Week in Ontario is an opportunity to celebrate the amazing farmers and farm families who quite literally grow the food that not only feeds our country, but helps to feed the world. And in fact, in Ontario, Agriculture Week was created by one of my constituents and the former local member of provincial parliament for what was then the riding of Perth, Mr. Bert Johnson. So I'm especially pleased to begin debate on Food Day in Canada on Agriculture Week. This Senate public bill was first introduced in the other place by the Honourable Rob Black, Senator for Wellington County. This bill proposes that to establish in each and every year the Saturday before the first Monday in August to be known as Food Day in Canada. This day would formally establish Food Day in Canada. And I say formally because informally, Food Day in Canada has been celebrated and informally recognized in Wellington County, in Southern Ontario, and in some parts across Canada for nearly 20 years. In fact, this past Food Day in Canada, on July 30th, 2022, landmarks across Canada were lit in red and white to celebrate Food Day in Canada. From the Confederation Building in St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador, to the Vancouver City Hall, from the Calgary Tower in Calgary, Alberta, to the CN Tower in Toronto, Ontario. These landmarks were lit in red and white to celebrate food in Canada from the farmer's field to the fork. I'm especially pleased that Food Day in Canada is being celebrated and championed by all 4 federal representatives for Wellington County. In addition to myself as the House of Commons sponsor of this bill, the Honourable Senator Rob Black, representative for Wellington County in the Senate. This is also supported by both the members for Wellington Halton Hills, as well as the member for Guelph. This bill is obviously not a partisan bill, but one in which we can all unite behind to celebrate Food Day in Canada. Now, Mr. Speaker, I want to step back a bit and reflect on the origins of Food Day in Canada. Some members will recall the summer of 2003. It was a difficult summer for many Canadians, especially those living in rural Ontario. There was a surge in the West Nile virus. The SARS virus had reached Ontario. There was a massive power blackout that summer. But in the agriculture sector specifically, it was a summer that was known for the spread of the bovine spongiform encephalopathy, better known as BSE, or by the colloquial term, mad cow disease. This crisis quite literally devastated the beef industry overnight. In moments, the cattle industry was in fear and panic, and Canada's trading partners slammed the door shut on Canadian exports of beef to the United States and to dozens of other countries around the globe. With these border closures, the livelihoods of thousands of hardworking farmers and farm families in the beef industry were decimated, quite literally, overnight. A report from Statistics Canada at the time said this of the BSE crisis, quote, "Prior to May 2003, Canada was the 3rd largest exporter of beef in the world. In 2002, Canada's export market for beef amounted to $4.1 billion. On May 20th, 2003, however, the nation's beef industry was rocked by a totally unexpected development. A single breeder cow in northern Alberta had tested positive for BSE, more commonly known as mad cow disease. Within hours, most nations had imposed a ban on Canadian beef products. By June 2003, Canadian beef producers had seen their exports to the United States drop from $288 million a month to 0. End quote. However, Mr. Speaker, while our farmers were working through this crisis, a passionate defender of Canadian agriculture from Wellington County named Anita Stewart stood up and started a movement to grow and inspire trust that our farmers would pull through this difficult time. It was in those dark days in the sunny summer of 2003 that Anita Stewart began the first Food Day in Canada. As the current coordinator for Food Day Canada, Crystal Mackey, describes it, Anita Stewart was a food activist and pioneer who had the vision for shop local food before it was a trend. The BSE crisis in 2003 was a turning point for her when she saw restaurants and Canadians buying beef from other countries at a time when our own Canadian beef farmers and ranchers were suffering huge financial losses and stress. She turned that tragedy into a tremendous opportunity to have a conversation with our country about the value of supporting our incredible food system. Canadians are humble people. Food Day Canada breaks us out of that for a day to truly celebrate the incredible people in our food system and the world-class food we have grown here, close to home. That first Food Day in 2003 was known as the world's longest barbecue. From that one event, Anita Stewart created to bring people together to pull through those challenging days, it has grown into so much more. In fact, in recognition of Anita Stewart's commitment to the food system in Canada, she was awarded a membership in the Order of Canada. The Governor General's citation for that achievement says this, quote, Anita Stewart is an enthusiastic and dedicated promoter of Canadian cuisine. Called a culinary activist, she has spent the last 30 years exploring Canada, sometimes even by dog sled and on Canadian Coast Guard icebreakers, discovering and chronicling the stories of the essential foods of our nation and the talented people who serve them. She is a passionate volunteer and the founder of Cuisine Canada and Food Day Canada. Sadly, nearly 2 years ago, Anita Stewart passed away at the age of 73. She had done so much in her lifetime, and her loss has been felt not only by those close to her, but by the entire food and agriculture community. As Dr. Charlotte Yates, president of the University of Guelph, said at an event this summer to honor Food Day, she said this, Food Day Canada is a grassroots movement that brings thousands of individuals and partners together. In many ways, we are here today in celebration of being able to carry on Anita's legacy. Anita believed more than anything in the power of food to bring people together, end quote. Mr. Speaker, in addition to being the first food laureate at the University of Guelph, the university's food lab is also named in Anita Stewart's honor. At that same event I referenced at the University of Guelph in July, I had the pleasure of meeting one of Anita's 4 sons, Jeff Stewart. He told me about his late mother's lifetime of dedicated work and her passion for Canadian food, and it lives on both through her family and also through Food Day in Canada. Last week, Jeff and his 3 brothers, Brad, Mark, and Paul, sent me a message about their late mother and what Food Day means to them. They wrote, since the 1970s, our mother, Anita Stewart, has been uniting Canadians through food. 20 years ago, she created Food Day Canada, a national celebration of Canada's unique, rich, and diverse food culture. Over these past 20 years, Food Day has evolved into a national community, celebrating Canadian food and those who bring it to us. The goal of the Associated Food Day Canada organization is to educate the public about Canada's food system and culture while elevating thinking about Canadian food sovereignty and food security. The organization and its members fully support Bill S-227 and will provide leadership, guidance, and resources to ensure that an official Food Day in Canada lives up to its potential as a positive, spirited, diverse celebration for all Canadians. By supporting this bill, the honourable members will take a historic step towards putting Canada on the map as a proud food leader, while also giving Canadians an opportunity to shop, cook, dine, and celebrate Canada's rich food culture. We sincerely believe that an official Food Day in Canada will offer significant cultural benefits to Canadians and their families, with economic benefits for communities and businesses, as we echo our dear mother's favourite credo, together, quote, "Canada is food, and the world is richer for it," end quote. And that was comments from Anita Stewart's 4 children. Since that first Food Day in 2003, it has indeed grown into a wonderful celebration of the food our farmers grow and the food that all Canadians enjoy every single day, whether at their kitchen tables or at restaurant tables across the country. It is celebrated on the Saturday before the first Monday in August, making it land in many provinces, including my own, on the Saturday of the August long weekend. Now, I know people might ask, why should this be an official day? Because, Mr. Speaker, out of the darkness of the 2003 BSC crisis, something wonderful emerged. And we as Canadians have the opportunity now to recognize that positive outcome of a negative situation. Over these past 2 decades, Food Day Canada has grown to encompass not only our farmers, but everyone along part of our national food supply chain. Those who work hard getting the seeds into the fields, those who harvest the crops, those who process the food, and those who prepare and serve the wonderful and delicious meals on Canadian plates. And Mr. Speaker, all of us have great things that we can celebrate in our ridings related to Canadian agriculture and Canadian food. Whether it's the fisherman in West Nova, or the dairy farmer in Abbotsford, or the farmer in Sarnia Lambton, we all have things to celebrate. And because I'm the sponsor of this bill, I can brag a little bit about the great riding of Perth Wellington, where we have more dairy farmers and chicken farmers than any other electoral district in this country, where chicken alone is produced at a rate of 103 million kilograms of chicken every year in Perth Wellington. We have 395 pig farms, 538 beef farms, 242,954 dairy or beef cattle in Perth Wellington. And collectively across this country, Mr. Speaker, agriculture and agri-food amounts for $134.9 billion in GDP activity each and every year. And that's just talking about one aspect of all that there is to celebrate. Given the long history that agriculture has had in the growth of our great nation, the meaning of food to our distinct cultural and multicultural heritage, surely Food Day in Canada is worthy of recognition nationwide on the last Saturday before the first Monday in August each year. Mr. Speaker, Canadians are hardworking and we are supportive of one another. That is the legacy of Anita Stewart, and that is a point of pride in our agriculture and agri-food communities. Mr. Speaker, let us work together and pass Bill S-227 and give Food Day Canada the official recognition it deserves. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Well, I do want to thank the member for his walk down memory lane of 2003 in August, when I was first elected as a provincial member and became a Minister of Agriculture. So what he's talking about, I actually got to live. Questions and comments? The honourable member for Guelph.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you so much to the honourable member from Perth Wellington for bringing this into this place after Senator Black put it on the floor of the other place. We met this summer on the lawn of the University of Guelph, and Anita Stewart continues to bring us together across party lines and across levels of government and really cultures. Could the honourable member maybe expand on how Anita's vision and humor to bring people together regardless of differences they might have in other areas, but we can all share a meal together?
The honourable member for Perth Wellington.
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I want to thank the member from Guelph for that great question. And he's absolutely right. The ability to share a meal among friends, among colleagues, and sometimes among people that you may not entirely disagree with is so important to finding common ground. And I think that's one of the great legacies of Anita Stewart. And he mentioned the comment about an event we were at together at the University of Guelph. And I think the comments from Dr. Yates, president of Guelph University, talked about those examples where Anita was able to bring happiness and bring cheer to a room by sharing food, by sharing that opportunity, whether it was on a university campus or whether it was in homes across the country. The ability to share those opportunities among all Canadians is so important. So I thank the member from Guelph, and I do believe that he will be supporting in this bill, so I support him, or I appreciate his support on this important matter. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Question.